A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today. So, cheers. Some delicious Carlsberg, not a sponsor. Now, when I was growing up, I was absolutely enamored with horror. Just fix this up. Horror literature, and I would read Stephen King, Dean Koontz. I loved the Richard Lehman, of course. I love the British horror authors like James Herbert and Shaun Hutson. And lately, I've kind of been revisiting that, although the book reviews on this channel, at least from me, because we are going to be getting some content from other Plaguelands Media guys. It's going to be all over the place this year. A lot of graphic novels and just a lot of stuff that is going to come out of left field. And a lot of it I had read in the past, and I'm just revisiting it. The book I'm reviewing today is one of those. This is a book by the British horror author Shaun Hutson. I'm a huge fan. I firmly believe that authors like Shaun Hutson and James Herbert are what Garth Marenghi's Dark Place is based on. Especially because his look and the look of Shaun Hutson on some of the back covers of his hardcover novels are so similar. This was a book that I read in high school and loved it. I love Shaun Hutson's work for a couple of reasons. One, it's accessible. Two, it's fucking wackadoo. The ideas are just crazy. Three, it's disgusting. But like all good 80s horror, there is a little bit of sex involved in this as well, a little bit of descriptive sex. The book I am bringing to you right now, and this is a Kindle version, but I had this cover on the copy I owned when I was in high school, is Spawn. And the little tagline there says, "From the grave to the cradle." This is a completely out there horror novel, basically about aborted fetuses coming to life. That's pretty much the plot. You do get a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of social commentary on abortion. Usually in the form of conversations between two characters. And, I didn't mind that at all. It didn't detract from the story or anything like that. It just seemed to flow naturally. There are two plots going on at the same time that seem to converge, and then one of them really, in my opinion, doesn't pay off. You have the story of Harold Pierce, who did something, although it was an accident, it involved a couple of deaths, and spent a lot of his time in a mental institution trying to recover from that. And when he gets out, you have his story where he starts working at a hospital as a porter. And then you have the story of Paul Harvey, who is a convicted murderer. He killed two people and he's serving life in prison, and he actually escapes. So you get, these are the two main stories. In between them, there's little character pieces here and there. There's a love interest between the cop that is trying to capture Paul and a doctor that works at the same hospital that Harold works at. So you can see how they all kind of interweave. And there are times when it does get a bit confusing, like who was this character, who was that character, and whatnot. Overall, this is 80s trash horror at its absolute finest. Now, I say trash horror. I'm not disparaging books like this. I love books like this. I grew up with books like this. When it was my birthday or Christmas, I asked for books like this. I love this shit. I freaking eat it up. It's been so long since I read this. I read this when I was 14, maybe 15 years old. Wow, that's over 30 years ago. So, yeah. Coming back to this, coming back to all of these old horror stuff, and usually I read the older stuff on Kindle because it's basically cheaper to get, more convenient, and if you look behind me, I've got no fucking room for new books, although I just keep getting them every day. You don't even want to look under my desk. You know what? I'm going to very quickly show you under my desk. Not sure how that turned out, but there you have it. So if you don't want this book spoiled, then of course go to another Plaguelands Media video. They are all fucking awesome, although we do spoil a lot of shit. But if you do want to know what happens in Shaun Hutson's Spawn, stick around for the next episode of
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
Now, this book is very near and dear to my heart, purely because I used it for an assignment in 12th grade English. I remember the assignment very well. We had to find a character description in a novel or a song or something along those lines, and then they would be read out to the class. I chose a character description from this book, and I never actually got to read it out to the class, sadly enough. But there you have it. Spawn starts with a young boy called Harold Pierce. Harold Pierce is a bit of a loner. He doesn't have a very good home life. He has a younger brother who's just a baby, and it seems like from the description, his mum is a bit of a slut. No father to speak of. He and his baby brother share a room in kind of a dilapidated house. And one night, he and his brother are in their room. It's kind of late at night. And Harold is a little bit of a pyromaniac in as much as he likes catching moths and setting them on fire and things like that. Also in his room is a stack of old newspapers for some reason. Harold, pardon me, I haven't drank Carlsberg in a while. That is good beer. Not a sponsor. Harold is playing around with this, and one of the moths he sets on fire falls onto the stack of old newspapers, which, of course, catch on fire. In trying to put out these newspapers, one of them inadvertently gets in the crib, sets the crib on fire, and his baby brother starts burning, screaming. His mother runs in, goes to try and save her youngest son, while Harold watches on, and she catches on fire. And then she looks at Harold and she's blaming him for the death of the baby. And then the house catches on fire and someone comes in, a neighbor, I think, and rescues Harold, but Harold is badly burnt on one side of his face. But he did cause the death of his mother and his baby brother, something that haunts him for pretty much the entirety of this book. He is put into a mental institution, and at the age of 40, they believe that he's been rehabilitated enough so that he can get a job. So the doctors in the mental institution get him a job at a hospital in the small town of Exham as a porter, who is basically the grunt. You know, they do the janitorial work and all that kind of stuff. He also is given a hut that is on the grounds of the hospital where he can live, and so he's very close to work and he doesn't have to kind of integrate into society just yet, because it's tricky. It's very tricky. In the interim, the mental asylum is shut down and a new one is made. So Harold is working at this hospital. While this is happening, Paul Harvey, who again shares a very similar backstory to Harold. He comes from a bad family. He was a bit of a loner, and he took his rage out and killed 2 people in the town of Exham, and was subsequently found, tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. He escapes. This is where we meet one of our main characters, Randall, this detective that remembers the case, and every police officer in this town is like, fuck, he's going to come back. We've got to fucking find this guy. The story of Paul Harvey through the book, it's a little anticlimactic, but at the end, especially at the end, but there is a part that is actually really quite satisfying. Anyway, Harold, working at this hospital, he discovers that one of his jobs is to take aborted fetuses and burn them in the furnace in the basement of the hospital. Now, this fucks him up a bit for 2 reasons. One, fire. He's, got the burns on his face that people try to ignore but kind of never do. Number 2, he doesn't want to burn these fetuses. He's strictly against this. So it creates this dilemma in Harold, who ultimately ends up taking these fetuses, 8 of these fetuses that have to be burned, and he gives them a proper burial in a field right next to the hospital. A field that happens to have like those electrical towers and shit right next to it. Okay, so they're still looking for Paul. The police are still looking for Paul. 3 months go by. In that ensuing period, we get a number of these little kind of vignettes on women who want to have abortions. Now, the 2 main ones that we really get, there's one woman who, her and her partner, she's pregnant, but she has a fantastic career and she doesn't want to give that up. And her partner thinks she's being selfish by wanting to have the abortion, but she has the abortion anyway. The other one, which is fucking twisted in my opinion, is this woman who she's she's a slut, basically. She's just a slut. But she's fallen in love with this guy, and she's living with her friend because her parents kicked her out. She's young, and this guy has been coming over, and they've been doing it. She's slowly fallen in love with him. She doesn't really understand what love is because she's just been jumping around from man to man. And ultimately, she stops using birth control to get pregnant, to trick him into marrying her. And when she does tell him one morning, he gets he's ropeable, and he's like, you know what? Fuck you. And he just leaves, and she decides to get an abortion. So they're the two kind of main ones that we're following. But ultimately, Harold takes 8 aborted fetuses and buries them in a field. Paul flees through this forest and ends up at a farmhouse that's been abandoned. He hangs out there and he finds a sickle. Now, the thing about Paul is his big thing is when he killed the 2 people and was convicted, he beheaded them. And now he has a sickle. And the police don't know where he is. They don't know what's going. They think he's left town, but just to be sure, they're just scouring all of Exham to find this guy. There is a huge storm, and lightning hits the electricity poles, which fall down and in the mud and the rain, and 3 of the 8 fetuses come back to life. Paul discovers this and takes them back to his hut, where in order to get them kind of better, he lets them kind of suck his blood, or he cuts his arm and drips it on them and all of this kind of stuff. So you've got a guy who inadvertently killed his baby brother and mother, now looking after 3 fetuses, 3 aborted fetuses that have come back from the dead. And you've got a serial killer with a sickle running around town. And that's the crux of the story. That's basically it. The other 5 fetuses in the field are discovered because of the rain and things like that. The way they're discovered is fucking hilarious. A guy and his wife and their 2 kids are driving home, and the kids need to use the bathroom. So they stop next to the field, and the dad says, just go into the field and take a piss. And they go in there and they discover the 5 fetuses that have been uncovered by the storm and whatnot. And then the police are called. Harold is ultimately confronted about it, and he basically says you shouldn't kill children, and that's what we're doing. They deserve a proper birth. He gets fired from the hospital. The female doctor who's dating the cop sees the cuts and stuff on Harold's body, tries to ask him about it, but he's not having any of it. Harold gets kicked out of his hut, ends up going back to the abandoned hospital where he kind of grew up, the abandoned mental asylum. Takes the 3 fetuses with him who are kind of growing. While this is happening, headless corpses are being found all over town. And the cops are like, it's this fucking guy. It's this Paul Harvey. We know it. That's his MO. So they're kind of chasing him down. A few cops go to the farmhouse to kind of recheck it because they didn't check the basement before. And one of them goes down to the basement. Paul Harvey's there with his sickle. He guts this guy and flees. They tackle the other cops that come, kind of tackle him, beat the living shit out of this guy, and he's sent to the hospital in an ambulance. While this is happening, a woman is brought into the hospital, and the doctor who's dating the cop has to operate on her because she thinks it's going to be a fallopian rupture. So she basically does surgery. She watches as her stomach kind of gets enlarged and the fallopian tube burst, and this woman dies. As this is going on, the aborted fetuses are fucking screaming and shit, and they can now communicate telepathically with Harold, which is just batshit crazy. So one of these fetuses was one of the abortions, was the abortion that this woman actually had. The doctor, freaked out by this, goes down to get records of the woman that was brought in. I believe her name was Judith, and discovers that this woman, in order for the fallopian tube to burst, the baby inside her would have had to have been at least 6 months old. And the records show that the doctor had actually performed the abortion on this woman 3 weeks ago. So it's technically impossible. She talks to her colleagues, and they're just, we don't know what the fuck is going on. Cops are following the ambulance with the serial killer in it, and the serial killer starts to have this reaction. So the ambulance guy in the back loosens his straps, at which point the serial killer manages to escape, and he fucks off into the woods. To my knowledge, never to be seen again. That storyline's over. I could be misremembering that. Now, Harold is in the mental hospital with the 3 fetuses, and he's trying to keep them alive. And the cops go. I think maybe the serial killer goes to the mental hospital. Anyway, the serial killer gets killed, or whatever. Who cares? The cops go. They find Harold in the mental hospital, and it turns out that Harold has been the one decapitating these people the entire time. It wasn't Paul Harvey at all. And the fetuses are killed. Kind of. Harold is inadvertently killed in the ensuing struggle, but then there's a little, I don't know what you would call it, teaser, maybe, where one of the fetuses is actually still alive and latches on to someone else. And that, in a nutshell, is Spawn by Shaun Hutson. I enjoyed this book when I was a teenager. I thought it was fucking gross and hilarious, and I just love that kind of shit. How did I feel about it now? Fucking awesome. These sorts of books have a place in history because British 80s horror is some of the most messed up stuff you're ever going to read, and it's fantastic if you're into that kind of thing. Reading this stuff now, it's just fun. It's just sitting on the train with my commute to work, reading some messed up shit, knowing everyone else around me has no idea what I'm reading, no idea what I'm thinking. Absolutely loved it. Now, because of the topic of abortion, you could argue, and I'm not saying it is, but you could argue that this is borderline transgressive horror. Very thin borderline there, though. It was just, it brought back memories of me at school, I've finished my work in class, and the teacher's like, you can read whatever you want, and pulling this book out, and the teacher's face when she sees this cover. I can remember having a book confiscated in the 6th grade, mind you. I remember the book so well. It was The Night Church by Whitley Strieber. And we had a substitute teacher. Mr. Gardner was away for whatever reason. We had a substitute teacher. And during lunchtime, I just happened to I was reading the book and I left it face down on my desk and I went to lunch. Didn't even think about putting it in the little cubby underneath. And the substitute was walking around looking at what people were reading so that they could kind of read passages from those books after lunch as part of the lesson. And they picked up The Night Church, and they looked at the cover and they read part of the first chapter, and my parents got called to the school because the first chapter of The Night Church is a woman being molested by a satanic cult. And my dad was so angry that he had to explain it's fiction. My son knows it's fiction. I've been reading this stuff since I was 10 years old. I love stuff like this. I have a ton more horror novels, old horror novels to read and review. I'm looking right now at Bentley Little's Dominion. This was recommended to me by a Plaguelandian out there who asked me to specifically read and review this book. I've got a ton of this stuff, and it's going to get read and it's going to get reviewed. But in the meantime, don't let people tell you what you can and cannot read. Don't let people tell you what you should or should not read. If you enjoy this stuff, just go with it. I mean, today, who's going to look at that and go, oh, that looks like a good read? Crazy people. But you know what? Who fucking cares? So, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to have another swiggy of Carlsberg. That was more than a swiggy. But I am going to say, all of you Plaguelandians out there, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Keep checking the channel. We've got some new content, new stuff coming up. But most important of all, do me a huge, huge favor. Read whatever fucking book you want to, people.